here's the extra practice for 8.6. This is solving these rational equations, and instead of like we're going to check the answers at the end to make sure that we don't get a bad answer, that it does work, and we're not dividing by 0. So instead of listing the restrictions, we'll just check at the end and make sure that we're not dividing by 0. Beginning here, this is a proportion. So to solve a proportion, we cross multiply. So this times this would be 3y, and then this times this would be 2 times y plus 1. So the cross multiplication means the two fractions are the two things are equal to each other. So if you don't remember that, if you take 1/2 and that's equal to 5 over 10, and you cross multiply, so that times that would be 10, and that times that would be 10. So the cross product is equal on a proportion. So this times this is equal to that times that, and that's how we set this up. Distribute. So 3y is equal to 2y plus 2. Get the y's on the same side, so we're going to subtract the 2y over. We just get y, and that drops down 2. Y is 2. So if I put the 2 back in, I'm not going to be dividing by 0. So sometimes you can get an extraneous solution on these bad boys. And so this is an okay solution. Moving on to the next one, it's another proportion, so I'm going to cross multiply. 1 times that would be itself. And then 2 times the next guy. And distribute. 2x minus 8. Got to get the x's on the same side, so I'm going to subtract the x's over. I'm going to get the numbers on the same sides, put the numbers over there, so that means x. That cancels out, that cancels out. That's 1x, and then what, 6? So x is 6. Put 6 back in, no division of 0. That's an okay solution. Now there's two ways to do this problem here. I like to do it by clearing the fractions, and that's how I'm going to do it. So if it doesn't work for you, there is another way by getting a common denominator here and subtracting the two fractions and then making it into a proportion again. But I think it's easier just to clear the fractions out. So we have x plus 2, x minus 2, and x minus 2. So the common denominator would be x plus 2 and x minus 2, because we need both of those. So basically you're creating something that each one of these can divide into. So this common denominator, least common multiple, gets multiplied by all of the fractions. So that means that this is going to divide into these. So this will divide into here one time, leaving this. So that would cancel out, leaving this. So it'll be this times this. So I write x times x minus 2. So then this divides into here, leaving that. So it'd be minus x plus 2, and then see that would leave this x plus 2. Equals, this divides, leaving that. So we have x plus 2 and x plus 3. So that's kind of how that works. So each one of these gets multiplied by this LCM, least common multiple. So then that cancels out, leaving this. This cancels out, leaving that. This cancels out, leaving that. And that's how I generated this here. So you're changing the equation into a quadratic equation, basically. So you need to make sure that when you change worlds that you don't get these extraneous solutions. Okay, distribute x squared minus 2x minus, I'm going to FOIL this out, but leave this negative in front here. X squared. 2x makes 4x. 2 times 2 makes 4. FOIL, x squared. 3x and 2x makes 5x, and then 6. The reason why I did that is because it's minus this whole thing, so the negative has to be distributed through here. So it's x squared minus 2x minus x squared minus 4x minus 4. Copy, copy, copy. All right, so now we got to put together our like terms. These cancel out. These go together. Same side simplify, right? Negative 6. And then the lone guy there is negative 4. So now I have this quadratic equation, which I mentioned. So how do we solve quadratics? We set them equal to 0. So that means I need to move over these two bad boys. Or maybe they're bad girls, I don't know. And we get this quadratic, x squared 11 and 10. And that all becomes 0, doesn't it? This would be a quadratic. It could be solved by completing the square. It could be solved by the quadratic formula. But I see that this factoring, and factoring is our friend, and it makes it solve it out a lot easier, doesn't it? 1 and 10. So now I do zero product proper t. So the two answers are -1 and x equals -10. So these are the two answers for this. These two answers, do they cause division of 0? That's the big question. Let me click right here. Yeah, I get the whole thing on the screen. So -1 and -10. If I put those in there, they work. They're okay. Now, if I would have gotten the solution 2, that would have been a bad solution, or -2, that would have been a bad solution. All right. There's two more problems on this worksheet. Number 4, a little sip of water. Now, I need to think about this factored. This would be x plus 3 times x. So you always want to inventory still to figure out the LCM. So I need to pick out x, because x would be a factor that's important in this, and then x plus 3. So x will divide into this thing, x plus 3 will divide into this least common multiple, and this will definitely divide into there. So that's the least common multiple of the 3 parts. So this divides into there 100% evenly, leaving 1. So it's 1 times the 3, so it's just 3. Plus, this divides into there, leaving the x, so it's x times this. And then this divides into there, leaving that, times 1 would be x plus 3. All right, perfect. Now we can solve this, distribute. So we get 3 plus x squared plus 2x is equal to x plus 3. Now I can subtract over the 3 and subtract over the x to get the quadratic set equal to 0. So we get x squared minus x plus x equals 0, because that would be 1. That drops down, cancels out, cancels out, cancels out. Now, people are like, how do I solve this? It still factors by taking out the common factor. Whoops, I meant for that to be an equal sign. So, equals 0, and then factor out the x, which would be x plus 1. Then we do zero product proper t, which means we set the first factor equal to 0. So x equals 0, right? That's one of the answers. And then x plus 1 equals 0. So you subtract that over, you get x equals -1. So there are the two answers. Now, if I put 0 back up here, that would be really bad, because 1 divided by 0. And you got to go back to the original to check it. 1 divided by 0 is not going to work. Now, -1 doesn't cause a problem, but this is the extraneous solution, so that goes away. This is a big no, and this is an okay one. That works to make the algebra sentence true. All right, the last problem, there's nothing in common with any of these. Like, see this last one here, so I didn't have to repeat this because it was a common factor between these two, so I really just needed these two to make the least common multiple. But now I need everything on this one. Okay, so I need the 2. I need the I need 2, I need the x minus 1, and I need the x plus 2. I need all of them, because none of them are have anything in common with each other. So in the number world, we say they're all like relatively prime. So this divides into there, leaving these two. These two things times 1 is those two things. So 2x plus 2. Plus this divides into here, leaving the first two things times 1 would be the first two things. Yes, equals 2 leads in there, leaving those two things times 1 leaves those two things. All right, so we get 2x plus 4. I'm distributing. Distribute again, 2x minus 2. FOIL, x squared. 2 minus 1. So if you do inside, outside, 2 minus 1 is 1, and then minus 2. All right, now, we're going to get everything to this side of the equation because that's where the quadratic, you got to set your quadratics equal to 0. But before we do that, I'm going to throw these together to get 4x. Throw those together, same side, simplify. Plus 2 is equal to x squared plus x minus 2. I'm going to subtract over the 4x, subtract over the 2. All right, so those cancel out, making 0. This falls down. That's a 1 minus 4 is negative 3, and then negative 4. Okay, factor, because this does factor. If it didn't, we'd use the quadratic formula. Minus 4 and plus 1. Yes. Zero product property. Set the factors equal to 0. And we get x is 4 and x is negative 1. Then we go back and check these into the original. So if I put 1 there, that would be bad, but negative 1's okay. And then 4, yeah, 4 would work, it'd be okay. So these two are the correct solutions, and that's it. So solving combines all the things that we've learned pretty much from the beginning of Algebra 2 to now. It's like you're putting it all together in one problem.